Hello, Bad-Tempered Badger here. Now that it's finally raining again after months and months of sweating my fur off, I thought I'd tackle a subject I haven't really looked at before. So for that reason I found myself an actual Noah's Ark guy with amazing hair. Let's see what he's got to say.
What? There was no worldwide flood? How? Why? Why the fact would you think that there was a lot of flooding on Mars, which hardly has any water, but you don't think our planet Earth had a flood when our planet has a lot of water?
If I've understood some articles I've been reading lately correctly, the planet's rocks may have soaked it up like a sponge. But wherever the water on Mars has gone, it's completely irrelevant to the water on Earth.
I mean, the facts of the canyons, the gorges, the continental rift, the shelves, the fact that this Earth looks so physically messed up in the fact is a lot of evidence to prove that there was a worldwide flood. Not just because God's word says so that there was a worldwide flood, and that's a clear line in the sand for me.
Unlike this line in the sand in Kenya, thought to be caused by tectonic plate movements slowly splitting Africa in two. You have heard of tectonic plates, right? You know, how the whole Earth's surface is constantly very slowly moving.
The scientific evidence points a lot to it. Did you know that there's a lot of rocks layers that are bent out of shape and such? Rock does not bend really well. And that's not even erosion. That's clearly sedimentary layers put on top of each other that are bent in slight ways, even going this way. Completely bent in this joint right here.
Yes, those are called anticline and syncline folds. They create very nice looking arch patterns and rock layers. And they're caused by tectonic plates pressing against each other, causing the rocks along the fault line to, over millennia, crack and fold in against each other.
And the fact is, there's a lot of fossils in the ground, especially a lot of marine animals, that are frozen positions. You know, either a little fish giving birth, a little bigger fish eating a smaller fish. It does not take millions of years to eat a fish or even give birth to a fish.
No. All it takes is a fish dying in the process of giving birth and then being buried under sediment. It's really quite simple, you know.
It's because it really fulfills a lot of the prophecy that scoffers in the last
Blah 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 Bible verses, blah 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 prophecy, blah blah blah.
By the way, here's my Walking with Jesus t-shirt. Moving way back, by the way. There are over 270 surviving flood legends from around the world, from cultures that perhaps haven't even heard of the Bible, and elements are still, from all those stories, still true in what with the Bible talking about, with how the flood happened.
Oh yes, many primitive tribal cultures have been devastated by floods. However, the stories listed here are so internally inconsistent and irreconcilably contradictory of each other that they quite clearly demonstrate they are not referring to the same event. In fact, the Bible's own account of the flood is internally inconsistent, apparently being made out of two previous narratives, stitched together. As I read it now, the author can't seem to make up their mind from line to line how many of which kind of animals there are.
Now the fact is, you're going to have to get all those cartoony Noah's Arks out of your head. They're always trying to make Noah's Ark look like an overloaded bathtub with giraffes sticking up out of the chimney about ready to sink at any moment. You had to get it into your mind that it was more something like this. And yes, even dinosaurs were on there.
Something like this, eh? Well, I found that picture on Creation Wiki. So let's have a look. Here's the Ark. There's Noah and all his family. Here's all the animals coming in. Let's have a closer look at some of these, shall we? They're all lined up there. Are they all going to fit, though? That's the question. Well, let's look at the sizes here. So here we have a giraffe. And giraffes tend to be around 6 meters tall, usually a little bit less. Let's assume this one is around the maximum size of 6 meters. We can extrapolate that to mean that the Ark is about 18 meters tall. So, let's have a look at what other animals we have here. What's this? This appears to be a stegosaurus. Well, how long is a stegosaurus usually? They, according to the fossil finds, tend to be around 9 meters long. So, that's a bit short. It would look more like this. Yeah, that's a bit bigger, not unreasonable. It's probably going to kill these guys on the way there. What's this? Looks like some kind of sauropod. I think probably Diplodocus. Let's assume it is for the sake of argument. Well, it looks about the same size as the giraffe. That's not unreasonable. But that's not accurate, is it? Diplodocus carnegie tended to be 25 metres long. And that looks more like this. So now we're starting to look like it might struggle to get up this ramp. But that's not the largest species. In fact, there's a much larger one called Diplodocus halorum, which is more like 50 metres long. So that would look much more like this. I don't think this ramp's quite up to the job, you know. Now, what other species of dinosaur would they need to fit on? Well, let's have a classic T-Rex, shall we? You've got to have one of those on board. They tended to be about 12 metres long, which would mean it would look like this. Oh no, that's got feathers, that's no good. I know it's more accurate, but ugh, I don't like them. Let's sort that out. That's much better. As you can see, from that, the Ark's starting to look a little bit crowded, but the Bible says you don't just need one of each, you need two of each, which really makes sense. So let's add another one each. There we go. Yes, it's starting to look very overcrowded aboard that Ark there. Now, this doesn't take into account the numerous other species of dinosaur that, if they lived at the same time as man, would need to be fitted on. So here's a few more species. And, of course, two of all of those as well. I don't think you're going to fit in this boat, which wouldn't be big enough even if you only accounted for the animals that would have actually been alive at the time. And, of course, there's another consideration, which is the door. The door looks to be, judging by our other measurements, about 4 metres tall. None of these are going to fit through it. There's another thing we haven't really considered here. Look at the Ark itself. Guessing this would be the stern and that would be the bow. Let's assume that for the sake of argument. So, stern here looks to just be straight up square. No nice point or anything to break up the water, but the square stern is not necessarily unheard of on a boat. The side, entirely flat and square as well, no nice curve to allow it to cut through the water. But let's have a little look at the bow. From what we can tell from this picture, the bow looks like it'll be completely flat as well. No nice curvature to cut through the water, so it'll be trying to cut through it more like a battering ram than a knife. That's not going to work terribly well. Let's zoom out and see what else we have here. Well, there don't appear to be any sails or oar slits or any other means of propulsion, and it doesn't seem to have a rudder to steer or a keel to keep it upright. This boat is very poorly designed. A square, cross-sectioned, rectangular oblong is a very poor shape. In fact, here's a picture from the same website of the Ark floating through stormy waters as the flood takes its course. Doesn't look terribly well designed. In fact, it would float better on the top than on the bottom. So, as a wave comes in, that cross-section isn't going to do it very well, as you can see from this highly scientific bucket. Any kind of wave or strong wind from the side will send the thing tumbling. And it wouldn't have terribly thick walls, judging by its size, weight, and the amount that's got to be fitted inside. So any strong gust of wind coming past and the inside will look like this. As the planks split, water comes tumbling in. People, animals, dinosaurs, and shit fly everywhere. I don't know why he insists on this design when on the same website there are much better ones that look much more like actual boats. They still wouldn't work, but they'd be better than this.
And yes, even dinosaurs were on there. And you say, dinosaurs on the Ark? I did not read that in the Bible. Well, of course you won't find the word dinosaur in the Bible, because that word wasn't made up until 1841. The word dinosaur is still a very young word, and there was a word that they actually used for dinosaurs back then. Dragons.
Yeah, but it doesn't mention dragons in Noah's Ark story either. You could argue that, well, of course, the dragon kind would be one of the kinds brought aboard during the flood. But that doesn't solve the issue that even without the dragon kind or the dinosaur kind, they're not all going to fit. Unless Noah conveniently came up with embryology and refrigeration for his trip, then conveniently forgot about them immediately after, it's not going to work.
And that's why there are thousands of legends of people killing off dragons. The fact is, dinosaurs did not live millions of years ago, and all those layers in the Earth are not representing different ages. They're representing different layers of density or hydrologic sorting based upon a flood. You can get a jar of dirt and shake it up and set it down. It's going to form into layers for you in a few minutes.
Jar of dirt going to help?
If you don't want it, give it back.
One thing this position also doesn't consider is what animals actually need to survive. Let's look at one animal, for example. Let's just pick one at random, I don't know. How about the badger? Let's see what a badger might need in a post-flood world in order to survive. A badger lives in a burrow or set, usually on sloping ground in woodland areas. They're omnivores, they eat a variety of different foods. So let's start with fruit. Badgers often eat fruit, nuts, things like apples, pears, plums, berries, all kinds of fruit like that. But of course, all this lovely foliage is dead because it's been submerged in water for 40 days. So all that's dead, gone, rotted away, done. That does mean, though, there's less places for the other things the badger likes to eat to hide. Let's start with earthworms over here, which make up about 80% of a badger's common diet. Assuming 2 earthworms are brought on the Ark, that'll do for a quick nibble. Right, they're gone, the earthworm is now extinct. So let's move on to the slug. And the slug won't even make it down the ramp from the Ark, because as soon as it touches the brackish salty water from the flood, all the slugs in the world are now extinct. Badgers sometimes like to eat plant bulbs. Unfortunately, the flood will have killed all the ones that were in the ground. There won't have been time for any new ones to have grown yet, so they're out. Badgers often like to eat grubs. Here we have some nice lovely grubs. There won't be any of those in the soil, all the ones that were there will have died, and any released from the Ark will be eaten by the badger and anything else that eats grubs within about 5 minutes, so they're extinct. Badgers will sometimes eat bird eggs, particularly of ground nesting birds. Here we have a lovely nest, which the birds in a post-flood world may have been able to make out of the remains of foliage lying around, and then laid their eggs. So, badger comes along, has a nice little bird egg snack. That species of bird is now extinct as it has nowhere to safely nest and rear its young. What else do we have here? The slow worm. That's a common sight in English gardens. Badgers do from time to time eat slow worms. Assuming 2 on the Ark, the slow worm's now extinct after the badger has a nice evening meal. There are many species of lizards that live in Europe, specifically in the British Isles. Assuming 2 of this species managed to get to the same area of the badger, that species is now extinct. Badger's still a bit hungry though. Hasn't really had enough to eat this evening in order to survive. Let's see, what else is available? Oh, the poor cute hedgehog. Yes, badgers do eat hedgehogs. 2 hedgehogs on the Ark. They're now extinct. But the badger may have eaten enough to survive the night. So, where does a badger normally live? In a burrow in the ground, known as a set. So the badger will try to dig itself a nice set, but the ground is waterlogged, burrow keeps collapsing, this is no good, badger has nowhere to hide. But what else was on that Ark? Well, according to this chappie here, the T-Rex. He comes in, has a nice evening badger meal, the badger's now extinct. Good work, chap.
You know, there's a lot of evidence for the fact that there used to be giants on the Earth in those days. Now, a lot of museum establishments these days, like the Smithsonian and such, have tried been hiding these discoveries because it goes against the evolution theory.
Just
the
try
evolution
this.
says we started off tiny, we're getting bigger and better and stronger and smarter. I think the Bible indicates that we started off bigger and we're getting smaller, weaker, and dumber. Now, it's true that in the past 100 years, there's been an increase in about 6 inches in average height only in industrialized countries, and that's because of increased nutrition, food supply, better sanitation, nothing to do with evolution. Again, simply put, Darwinistic evolution is a religion. They don't want any evidence to go against their theory, and they would have thrown it out a long time ago if it was real science, because the evidence does not match what they're trying to believe. You know, the geologic column, for instance, doesn't even exist anywhere on planet Earth except in the textbooks. Now, I think the the armored skeptic would often be giving you a lot of answers that often are just put in repeat in a lot of textbooks these days because they're choosing not to update any of the information or the lies that they have in the textbooks.
Well, you can talk, Mr. Plagiarism Face. Your favourite reference book hasn't been updated for centuries.
I'm going to set the record straight right up front. I'm not trying to force creation into the schools. I'm not trying to force evolution out of the schools. I just want the lies out of the textbooks.
Well, that's an admirable goal. But I think what you'll find will happen once that's done is that there won't be very many religious textbooks, and it'll pave the way for a new generation of non-religious, skeptical people, which would be an excellent thing.
So my final verdict is, there is evidence for a worldwide flood. Just look around. The world is physically and even spiritually destroyed, I might say. We're living in a junkyard. Peace out. Keep thinking. Jesus bless you. And TDFN, shout out for now.
He does have a point here. The world isn't in a great state right now. The World Wildlife Fund estimates that between 0.01 and 0.1% of all species will become extinct each year under current trends, which, given estimates of the number of species on the planet, is anywhere between 200 and 100,000 species becoming extinct every year. The effects of humanity's carelessness are plain to see. The best thing we can do about it is to combat misinformation, to make sure that humanity understands the damage it is causing to the natural world, and to not rely on a great supernatural being in the sky to fix everything for us. Because if we cock this planet up, the waters of the deep won't come welling up to wash away our mistakes. Thanks for watching, everyone.
All right. I can see that I will have to